So I'm going to talk a little bit more about navigating, and then we can check out a few different tricks in R. So there's a few different ways that you can run lines. Like I said, you can run an entire chunk by pressing this button here. You can run all chunks below your current chunk, all chunks above, in which case there isn't any, or you can run all. You can run the entire thing and walk away and come back in 15 minutes after everything's done running. You can also click on a line, hit Command Enter, and run just that one line. You can also triple click, hit Command Enter, and run that one line. You can also select a whole block, hit Command Enter, and run a chunk like that as well. And this becomes very important when you're trying to troubleshoot things later on, and you don't exactly know why code isn't working. You might have to go element by element to check it. So that's the beginning of the script. I also have another chunk here. This is just a little function I wrote to improve the visibility of some graphs. So all you have to do is hit play. You can just ignore that. And now we're in our first heading. So for the HTML file, it's broken up into different sections, and you can designate those sections based on this numbering system right here. So for instance, the HTML knows that whenever it sees a hash in this, that this is going to be a top level basically. And in this file I have 8 top levels. I have data import, data assessment, normalization, etc. And then within that there's subsections. So there's load the annotation table, which you can see is in smaller font and is a subsection. So that is denoted by 2 hashes. If you wanted to do a third subsection level, you would do 3 hashes. But basically this helps set up structure so that you can easily navigate to certain specific areas. For instance, PCA plot, and now maybe I want to see the replicates to see if there's any clustering based on replicates, for instance. So this kind of inherent structure is great for the HTML file. It's also very good for navigating. So if there's a particular part you want to navigate to, you want to use this search function. I am constantly using the search function. It is so useful. So let's say I want to go to section 2. I go to section 2, which is line 179. I can go to section 3, 4, 5, and you'll start to memorize these as you're working in your code. And you'll be able to easily go to these sections without having to scroll through like this and look for things specifically. You also want to use this to change different variables. So let's say I want to change this variable meta all, and I want to add a new comparison. So instead of knockout and wild type, I can add a whole new, let's say, overexpression and wild type. If I want to add a whole new contrast, I can copy and paste this in, or I can replace it. So let's say I wanted to replace all of my unknown and wild types with overexpression. So let's do this. So we can do overexpression now in wild type. Now I can change all of them, or I can see every instance where it appears in the text. So this is line 261, 268. I can kind of go through and start editing all of these. And as soon as you get your scripts back from me, you probably will want to change it. I would just recommend always putting a new date on every single version of a script. I mean, you can end up with hundreds of versions of these scripts, but it's much better than losing your code. So I would always constantly update your versions as you're working. Another thing you can do when you're editing, particularly if you have trouble, is you can double click any word and it will highlight the instance of that word and where it appears in all the code. So for instance, if you are trying to do a quick check to make sure that everything's fine, and you double click, you can see that if you have a misspelled word, that's not going to be highlighted with the other ones. And so as you go through and you're clicking, you can see, oh, there's a problem, this one is not highlighting. So that becomes a very extremely useful tool to do. So as I am editing things, I'm constantly double clicking and checking to make sure everything's matching, and kind of you start to spot the patterns and be able to edit it very quickly.